Hello. Here we are
Good
again.
morning to you. Good morning to you. I
It,
definitely have that holiday vibe going.
that's awesome. It's just going to be December 20th when they hear this and the
Is it the
Christmas.
20th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The day before solstice.
Yes, and I read a thing that said that the actual physical reality of where the with the earth shape and the orbit that the shortest day is actually going to be I think Sunday night, not Tuesday.
And where'd you read this? Mad Magazine?
Uh no. Close. I read it on Facebook.
I can't. Oh, then it's got to be true. Of
But
course.
my friend showed a very convincing chart that showed the orbital patterns of an astronomer showing that despite the way we run the calendar, the reality of the physical relationship of how the Earth's spinning, et cetera, in Northern California on the solstice isn't actually on the 21st this year. Or wait, no, the solstice is on the 21st, but the shortest day of the year, physically speaking, is actually 2 days before.
And there's always someone who's just going to have to come up and go, by the way, you're not celebrating your birthday on your real birthday because you were actually born
Right? If,
in a Teflon pan.
on the fifth Tuesday of the 17th month beyond Seven Dare.
Because Neptune was in retrograde and everyone knows.
In fact, this brings up an important point, which is that Jesus wasn't born in December.
Well, some people just say you just stop there. You don't even have to put December.
He just wasn't born?
Exactly.
That doesn't make sense.
To some, it does.
Yeah. Bring them. Bring them in here. I want to speak to them.
Hey, speaking of, my family for the next episode has opted out of being a guest.
Well, we'll save that for the production meeting on Monday. No, I don't want people to see how the sausage is made.
All right.
Today, we are going to talk about each of us has picked five Christmas movies that we think are worth watching, or for some other reason might be worth talking about. Whether they're worth watching is questionable.
Oh, our top 5 holiday movies.
Right.
Top
It was
5.
extremely difficult. Was it hard for you to come up with the top five?
No.
Okay. It was hard for
First
me to
3
just
were
come
like
up with
bam,
five.
bam. And then the fourth one, I always forget, but it was a bam too. Like they're all shoe-ins. I'll
Well,
say
good,
this.
because I put a lot more like no, it's got to be more weird and eccentric than that. So maybe we won't have the same five.
Oh, maybe not.
I sure hope not. Let me just ask, is Die Hard on your list?
No.
Mine neither. So right away, boom. See you later. Die
But
Hard.
this is a top 5 list. So, here's the thing. My fifth one, choosing the version was actually easy for me, but there was an element of.
Well, let's get into it. What is it?
No, I can't start with my fifth one.
Yeah, we're gonna go 5, 4, 3, 2, and come up with the best ones.
Our number. Oh, I can't do that because these are all. There's none better than the other.
Well, then it doesn't matter whether you start at 5 or not.
Right. All right. So we're diving into this, and I'm going first. All right. Let me start with the one that is always. This is the one I'd keep forgetting. I'd go, I know I have a fifth. I'd have a fourth one because the first 4 were like, bam. And I go, what is the fourth one? So anyway, here we go. Miracle on 34th Street.
Awesome. So what is it about?
Either version too. It could be the old one or the new one.
Yeah. What's I mean, I'm familiar with the old one. What's the new one?
It's pretty much the same premise, only
not as good.
Only not as good. I think instead of it is good. See that it is good. And I think instead of the letters, which is what they used in the court in the old one, in the new one they use a dollar bill, and it says, "In God we trust." And so the lawyer's point was, well, if the US government is putting on the dollar bill that they trust in something they can't see, they can't prove, they can't blah, blah, therefore.
So the reason you like it is that there's this point in each of the films where Santa is basically put on trial.
Well, here's what I will say, that in all my choices, that is definitely a thing. All my choices are the premise of not believing and overcoming disbelief to a miracle. Like, it's just like the miracle cannot be ignored.
Awesome. So in the original one, it's the letters that are presented in court, right?
Right.
And so if the U.S. Postal Service recognizes Santa and deliver
And
these
it's a
these
US
messages
government
and
entity.
to this guy, because they've been delivering them to this guy, right?
Right. Right.
Then what better evidence do you need that he's Santa,
Right.
right? And so that's the payoff, because there's this sort of attacking of whether Santa's real or not as the premise of the film.
Right. And in the story is, like the wonderful being is sending people to the other store, oh, we don't have that here, but if you go over there, and it blows up. People are loving it, so in actuality, he's going against the whole marketing capitalist greed ethic of mine, keep it all here, keep it all here. It's like, no, share it. And in that sharing, more abundance happens.
And is that in both films?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, even though I don't have it here, go buy it over here, instead of like, well, why don't you buy this instead from us? Got it.
Right. And they're bad people. Stay away from them.
Well, and what's interesting to me about this particular set of the two versions of the film is that they correspond to you in the sense that the big gift is the house. Like
I don't think in the original was a house. In the new one,
it is.
Is it a house?
Yeah, the little girl wants the house so that the mommy and daddy can be together.
Right.
Right. She wants the home because she thinks that will be the key to them being together.
Right. So yeah. And that's the other piece, is the innocence, the innocent child who believes but doesn't believe, and has had their parent, like take that magic out of them. And because you got the real world. And then, yeah, so the overcoming of that skeptic, that, real world hard knocks to this miraculous life.
Yeah. So what else could we say about Miracle on 34th Street? Like, the title Miracles in it, which both you and I are students of a course in miracles. So I guess that's why. And then in the films, the idea of disbelief in the form of innocence being overcome, right, with the little girl in each one. Right. And then our own disbelief in Santa is challenged by what we would consider adult level proof in the court of opinion, right? And then at the final part of the film, there's this sort of like, everyone is invited, not just the girl and not just the adults, but this idea of somehow this real estate miracle happens. And that strikes at the heart of Americans, because it's the home ownership motif is really like the big thing that we all really want. It puts us in a class of having.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's not a 4 walls and a roof. It's this warm place with family. And the essence for me of Miracle 34th Street is love wins.
Right.
And it wins with insurmountable odds. And that's the other thing. I think all the choices I have are insurmountable odds. Like, there is a real miracle in, on paper, it wasn't going to work out for all of the stories I chose.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. how things on paper don't actually turn out the way we think, and that ends up being better.
Right. And I think that's an issue I have with academia. When it's strict academics, I think it gets really locked in this show it thing. And the ethereal essence of life, without that peace in knowledge, it's stale. It becomes like concrete and doesn't live.
Yeah, this idea of the spirit of life and love living in an uncodified way. It always shows up in a new form, in a way we don't expect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. So there's my 5. What's yours?
My number 5 is the film Love Actually.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right? And one of the things I love about it is it's actually like 4 or 5 films in one.
Yeah.
There's the story of the guy who's the rock and roll legend, who's kind of past his prime, and he's kind of not a very lovable character, right? But by the end of the movie, he kind of redeems himself in a certain way, but he's still not, he redeems himself to the public, but in the background, he's still kind of a not very lovable character, but he ends up, hanging out with his manager person, right? And that's where their connection is. And, this film has so many people, and I love how he slags on Elton John. He's like, yeah, I could have gone to the Elton John party, but I'd rather spend it with you, getting drunk and watching porn. And then there's like just so many intertwining relationships. Like we see these little vignettes, right? Yeah. And the idea that the one person is getting married and the best man is totally in love with her, but she doesn't know it until she comes to get the video from him. And so then she starts to realize that he's totally obsessed with her. And then he shows up later, and even though it's Christmas and he's breaking up a marriage, he can't help himself. And so he does the Bob Dylan thing where he's playing the music, but he's revealing these cue cards which tell the truth about what he really thinks about her. And what's crazy about this movie is it's kind of counterintuitive, because we see that the husband she's with really doesn't have the kind of caring for her. He's kind of going through the motions. And so there's this moment where we end up in the uncomfortable position of actually rooting for the cheaters to have the experience that they want to have. And so this film is the sort of messy reality of relationships and the multiple tangled webs of how everybody comes together. And in the end, this kind of willingness to do the difficult reveal, to admit the uncomfortable thing, right, is what ends up clicking everything into place so that people can actually be together. And it's sort of strange because the husband actually ends up with someone else, with another person, and they're happier too for it. So it's like we have all these conventions around how we live our life, but the heart doesn't follow those.
What's interesting is I don't remember that storyline at all.
Right. Totally. There was a bunch of it I don't remember too, but fortunately Wikipedia exists.
One of the things I love though is the little kid. And I love how he and his father are having trouble, like his father's having trouble connecting with him. And when he finally does connect with him at the end, and he's, oh, you love this girl? Let's go get her. Let's go. And he's like, totally like, yeah, it's crazy. And we're doing this. And that to me is what a dad should be. It's like, yeah, I'm on your ship. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. And then there's the whole thing around how the prime minister, who supposedly isn't supposed to be involved with certain kinds of people, but he realizes that it doesn't matter where we come from, that love knows no limitations. And so he breaks all the convention and he ends up being with this woman. What were you going to say?
Well, I just remembered the whole thing with the professor and his wife, and that was a sad storyline. Like that doesn't have a happy ending.
Right. There's a lot of reality in this film.
Yeah.
Death.
And
right?
that was fucking hardcore, man, when she realizes like that necklace wasn't for her.
Yeah.
And
It's
he's like, and
so
he realizes too, like, oh, this isn't a good thing.
so this film is just it shows the really uncomfortable underbelly of human relationships, and then also how we move through the world in trying to resolve all the tension that comes up around it. And you gotta admire any movie that has Billy Bob Thornton as the president of the United States.
I forgot about that piece. That might be one to watch again this year.
It's a
Yeah.
perennial. Like the ones I picked, I think I can watch every year. I'm not sure because a couple of them are really new, and I'm not sure that they have that kind of long term staying power. And I'm really glad that I didn't pick like for instance, A Wonderful Life is not on my list, right? So, and that's a great movie, but it's not on my list.
It's on mine.
Awesome.
So, well, wait, let's wrap this up for yours because that was one of the prerequisites for me. Like, as I was imagining, okay, what's my top 5? One of the things I came to is I would watch any one of these right now. Like I've seen these lots of times and I'll probably see them lots of times more. And there's never, when watching it, it's never a grind. It's always a joyful experience.
Well, what's interesting about this particular film is because it's so complicated and there's so many nuanced relationships, we forget. So it's the kind of thing that if you watch it a couple, 3 times, even like 3 years in a row, you'll watch it and be surprised again because of the complexity that's involved.
And I love the 2 porn stand-ins. Their storyline is so fun.
I don't remember that. What is that?
Remember the couple where they're stand-ins for the porn, and that's how they meet.
Right.
And so when doing the lighting stuff, oh, can you grab her breast? Yeah. And at
Right.
this point, they kind of have a connection, but he's sort of like, okay, like that's my job, but
right. Now I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
I remember watching this with the kids when they were pretty little. And yeah, and there was like that scene, Liz and I had totally forgot about that. And that comes over, we're like, okay, so now this is happening. All right, here we go.
So I just want to note for the audience that we apparently are having some kind of audio glitches, and hopefully that won't be too disturbing. But I'm noticing that there's some audio artifacts showing up, and that's just the way digital production goes sometimes.
Because I'm not hearing it at all.
I'm hearing it, and it's specifically around your stuff. But it isn't so bad that we have to stop, right? It's just that I noticed a couple of things. Let's continue. What's the next film for you?
All right, so next on my list is Elf.
Awesome.
And that one in part is because that's Jonah's film. He has created the family tradition that gets watched every Christmas. And it's a brilliant film. Once again, the non-believer, the miracle, the overcoming disbelief. It really shouldn't work. And I think James Caan did a brilliant job as the father. And I watched the Netflix special that's been going on where they, behind the scenes. So to learn what a shoestring they were on creating that movie.
Yeah.
And the risks involved with Will Ferrell at the time, because he wasn't a known.
Yeah. In fact, they were like, no, we don't want him. And,
Right. And to see James Caan like not getting him at first, like, what the fuck are you doing? But then getting it. Oh, I get it. And how everyone, the tricks they did, like the things with, so that he looked like a huge giant elf in the toy stop with, perspective tricks with the camera.
Yeah.
And then also I love, they're not on my list, but the TV shows of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer
that are in the film.
Yeah, the homages to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Elf is definitely, and that I think And for all you fucking cancel culture bullshitters, I love with what's her name who did the TV thing, that girl, she played the love interest, and the song,
Yeah.
Baby It's Cold Outside.
Right. Right.
You know?
It plays a prominent role in that film, and we've since realized that that's a kind of patriarchal.
Well, some haven't. Fuck that. I haven't realized that. It's a great Christmas carol.
Okay, I see that it hasn't still penetrated your consciousness why that's a problematic
No,
song.
it hasn't. No, I kind of feel like the man and woman in the studio who were singing that song were just having a good time, having fun. Sometimes,
right, but it's not them that's the concern. It's the context of the the power dynamic in that thing where she's just saying, "Hey, I gotta go," and he keeps coercing her to try to stay.
okay, we can throw all sorts of chaos into that, and we can also throw non-chaos into that. Maybe they were just being flirty.
Maybe this is an opportunity to do a really good Christmas movie based on the song.
Fuck yeah. I
Right?
like that idea.
Right? This is a great
I like
idea.
that. Yeah.
And we'll really explore these things and then somehow weave it together in a miracle of sovereignty and non-patriarchal dominant
Well, here's
culture.
the thing, like energy, not anyone can embody any energy, right? So masculine and feminine, there is a joy to the playful cat and mouse play of sexual flirtation, and I think kind of that, for me, that's more of what that song's about. When she says, well, maybe just one more, that's not because she's being forced to it, because she wants the game to continue.
Well, this quickly could dissolve into a conversation about that song instead of about Christmas movies. And I get it. But I don't want to eat up all our time because we still have like 8 more movies to get to, and we've already spent almost a half an hour on it.
All right. By the way, I have elf socks, so but they're in the dirty laundry, so I can't show them. Okay.
Elf socks. Oh, I see, for Elf. Got it. So you like that movie, you like that song, and in the end, we end up believing in Elf, and she buys in eventually too.
Yeah, like she's the one who starts sinning, and again, the whole thing is like the miracle is drifting away because people quit believing.
What's the actress's name?
God darn it! She had that TV show, with that girl. Is it?
Yeah, I know who it is. I was just
Daphne,
wondering.
like Daphne.
No, it's not Daphne.
Oh, it's not that girl either. who's?
Oh, I know the name. It's she's the current host of the new version of The Dating Game on ABC television.
Is she really? I'm sorry to hear that.
She's one of my favorite.
Zooey Deschanel.
That's it. Yeah.
Her last name sounds like a dessert. I'll have a Deschanel with a cappuccino, please.
She's a dessert, all right, man.
Fuck, it is. You're right about that.
But it's so funny because she's so more pure and not so overtly sensual. And I'm not sure about her in real life, but I have a feeling that she's also like that too. She's like kind of reserved and asexual.
We'll have to ask her ex-husbands.
Does she have plural ex-husbands?
Yeah, that's what I just glanced at. New girl. That's
new girl. I really like her body of work.
Yeah, and she's also done some recordings with people that are pretty cool. Like I just can't remember her guesting with some solid people. Anyway.
Awesome.
All right, so what's your second?
Scrooged.
Don't worry. That's a great choice. That's interesting because my very last choice isn't Scrooge, but that was a contender. And yeah.
I really love this new take on it in the modern world with a cynical network executive who's really irredeemable. right up until the last minute. And there's so many great characters in it. Like, you know, the fact that he got Robert Mitchum to play his, you know, the studio owner, and Bobcat Goldthwait, and, you know,
Oh, yeah.
Karen Allen.
And what's his name from New York Dolls?
Right. He plays the ghost of Christmas Past, the
Yeah.
taxi driver.
Yeah.
Right. And he's got such flavor. It's got such a New York flavor to it, this thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then
And what's her
also
name with the toaster? That scene always gets me. I
the
heard she really smashed him with that toaster.
well, the Christmas present, right? The ghost of Christmas present,
Yeah.
right? And
What's that? Yeah.
she's the fairy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Wait, no, that's the ghost of Christmas
No, that
future.
was Ghost of Christmas Present.
And she smacks him around and pulls on his lips
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Yeah, she's really great. And then um, all of the tension that's in pretty much every scene, especially when the production starts and he's like supposedly running it, but he's just ruining everything, right? Like, these people are working their butts off to pull this thing on live on Christmas Eve, and he's just so irredeemable. It's not like Miracle on 34th Street. Yeah, there's a payoff at the end where he gets it, right? But the miracle is really about the miracle that happens inside of him, not so much as like the big, you know.
Well, that's what I think that is the real miracle. The
Yeah,
real miracle is that people are transformed inside.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And it's such a great backdrop, you know, and I love Bill Murray. I think he's like one of the greats.
He did a great job. That commercial he made was so fucking good. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Plus it has Indiana Jones' girlfriend as the
Right.
love interest.
Right. And so there's a lot of controversy because they went through several iterations on the script, and she was coming out of theater. And so she was like trying to follow exactly. And Bill was totally improvising all the time and constantly tearing up the script and doing all this crazy stuff. And so their actual chemistry on set apparently wasn't nearly as connected as one would hope. And, you know, he's got his brothers are in it, you know, the Solid Gold dancers. There's just all these different, you know, Lee Majors is in it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That's
Yeah.
right. I love the line where he's all just staple the fucking antlers to their head. You're like,
Right.
oh my God.
Right.
He is such the maniac.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Ghost of Christmas Future, with that whole bit was such a harrowing bit, you know, like all the scenes involved with the Christmas Future were so dark and cold.
Yeah, it really went dark. They
Yeah.
really went there, which helps with the sort of the release,
Yeah.
right? But then the final scene at the end, when they're singing "Put a Little Love in Your Heart," like what happens for me every time I watch the movie is I start to tear up as a result of that song. And I think that's one of the things that's really potent about Bill Murray's body of work is that he really gets how music works. And in this case, that song really just hits home, right?
Yeah.
How about how it's really how we just have a choice to like try to treat each other with a little bit more love and a little bit more optimism and hope. And
Is
that
Viola Davis the actress who played the single mother and
Let
his
me look.
assistant?
Yeah, I think it is her. She plays the assistant, right?
Right. And she has a son
Yeah.
who's the Tiny Tim.
I'm looking at the list here. I don't see Viola Davis's name.
Who was it? Great choice.
Yeah.
I love the hand coming out of the elevator. There was just so much good.
Yeah, unfortunately, Wikipedia doesn't list her in the cast, which I think is a sad reality.
David Johansen, he was the tech. Carol
Right.
Kane, Ghost of Christmas Present.
Right.
Alfred Woodard. Alfred, she was the one who played the assistant, Alfred Woodard,
Yeah, that's it.
and
She's a
she's been in
producer. Yeah,
12
she's
Years a Slave. She's been in tons of stuff.
yeah. She really brought some gravitas to the movie too.
Yeah, yeah. I remember like with that song you mentioning, her presence in that was a big part of the emotion for me.
And what's so successful, I think, about this film and then about these kinds of stories is that in order for the upside to feel so good when we get to the final act, the depths actually have to be real. They have to. He really has to be an unlikable character, and he has to do some actually really dark things in order for us to feel the full weight of his, emancipation and then the miracle of it. And I love that about this film.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say that's real.
All right,
All
let's
right,
move on. What's your next one?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
And that just, I think to me, it's a given. You got the angel coming, you hear a bell, an angel gets his wings. And once again, you've got someone who has, first of all, I have an affiliation with someone who kept letting go of their personal dream to help others. I appreciate, like, that's a nice path to follow.
The path of altruism, where he's just giving away the bank to everyone to help them,
Right. And
but it
like
ends up biting
he's
him in the
all
butt.
packed up and ready to go. And something happens. He's like, oh fuck, okay. And so he goes back and deals with it. And he's always putting his dream on hold. And and then to have that experience of what would life be like if I wasn't here. So to be able to really see the impact one has on life is, sort of I'd say a bucket list item in a way. Obviously, I don't expect it to happen, but and again, at the end where all the townspeople come with money to, and so, yeah, that to me was a shoe in.
It's also bleak in the whole idea of killing ourselves when the things are the darkest,
Yeah.
and what a huge loss that is, and how what it does is it perpetuates everybody else's suffering in a way deeper way than if we just sort of stick around and toil through it. Yeah, it's obviously such a classic, and we're, it's worth watching every year, I think. That Would you colorize it ever?
No, 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 no. I picture it in black and white. That's interesting. Was it colorized? Remember when Turner was doing that? Never
Mm-mm.
was. Yeah. No, I would not.
Yeah.
And partly, what comes to mind is like the scenes on the bridge and the snow when he goes back to the bar and it's just fucking hell. I think the black and white element even gives more to that whole shadow aspect of the story.
Yeah, and it's noir, right? It just
Yeah.
takes it again to the depths.
Right, right.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about it is, like with Scrooge and with some of the other movies, there's this thing that the story can be remade, and with It's a Wonderful Life, there'll never be a sequel. If they ever try to make a sequel out of that movie, they're
Oh,
gonna just be, so many people will cry foul.
yeah, or try to remake it, which is interesting. Just whipping back to Miracle on 34th. That's the only one I can think of where they remade it and it's still on point.
Yeah,
There's enough
that's
change.
always a risk.
Yeah, huge risk. I can't think of any.
I still think the emotional weight of the original is still, better. And you could never do anything better than It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy
Yeah.
Stewart. I mean, it'd just be crazy to try it. Like,
And the
but let's
woman who played
entertain for
his
30 seconds. I know we're going to run out of time, but if you had to cast It's a Wonderful Life today, and we were going to do the unthinkable, who could play him? Exactly. Nobody.
there we go. All right. So what's your number three?
All right. My number three is Four Christmases with Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon.
Really?
Yeah. What I love
Wow.
about this is these two characters are committed to their lack of commitment to each other, right? They're definitely in relationship, but they both aren't really that much into being like in a relationship or being married and having kids. They don't really even want to buy into the kind of the schmaltz of the Christmas holiday, right? But they get stuck. They're kind of the yuppie, couple, and they get stuck at the San Francisco airport, and their trip to the Tahiti gets canceled, and so they're forced to go. They might as well go visit their families. Now each of their parents is in a divorced couple, so that's four different houses that they have to go to. So they end up going with each other to a few of them, and they meet the dysfunctional families, and there's some great Robert Duvall's in it, right? John Voight, Sissy Spacek. It's a good cast. John Favreau's in it. And what I love about the film was, at the time I first saw it, my own marriage was really on the rocks. And so there's all this, like, and I come from divorced parents, right? So there's all this family tension around broken humans and bad relationship dynamics, and how they cause trauma. And the whole Robert Duvall character is constantly like his young he's witnessing his younger brother, the Vince Vaughn character Brad, as and how he's been stunted by being in this relationship with his dad, and there's this horrible tension, and he's so cynical. Brad is so cynical as a result, and he doesn't want a family. And then in the film there's this moment where the two lovers have an argument, and they end up splitting up. One gets out of the car and heads off, and they end up back at their folks' house, kind of licking their wounds. And it's while the male protagonist, Brad character, is with his father, that something clicks for him, and he starts to realize that he would want a family and that he would want to get married. And he's basically, prior to that, his girlfriend, Reese Witherspoon, Kate, has said, I think I want this. She like realizes that family's important to her, and he gets scared and he runs. And I think this is a pretty potent thing for men, and it was part of my life. Like, I was a little relationship averse because I came from divorced parents, and so I eventually fell in love at such a level that I overcame that, and I wanted the happy ending. And so I love that at the end of this movie they realize that the miracle of their love and their connection is so potent. And it's definitely a B movie. Why it's on my top 5 list, it's probably because of my own, wounding and my own family history that makes it that way. It's not that it's that
Look
significant.
at
I mean, the
this.
fact that I bring it up, it's a wonderful lot next to a wonderful life, tells us a lot, right?
But look
But
at the cast: Reese Witherspoon, Vince Vaughn, Mary Steenburgen, Robert Duvall, Sissy Spacek, John Voight, John Favreau, Dwight Yoakam, Tim McGraw, Kristen Chenoweth. Like, these are
not an Academy Award winner among them.
none of Sissy Spacek has definitely won an Academy Award.
Yeah,
And Robert Duvall has won an Academy Award.
you're
John Voight.
right. You're right.
So,
I
like
I
this,
think it's the context for modern society is great, because our society's not like it was in It's a Wonderful Life. All the family units in that film have this sanctity
right,
and this structure to them. And so what's great about this is it's set in this dysfunctional reality that was part of America, and yet it redeems all of these crazy characters. I still don't like the Robert Duvall character. Like, in the end, he's still a father I wouldn't really want to have, right? And I think that it's okay for us to realize there's certain relatives we don't love the way we're supposed to, or whatever.
right.
But to me, it's the way that in the end they get past all their shempa, all their fear based on their trauma, and they decide to take the risk and actually go all in and become a family. And that appeals to me at a deep level, because I come from a broken family. And so that's like the ultimate Christmas wish for me, is that the family will be healed and love will be triumphant.
All right. Well, now I kind of want to see that again. I know I've seen it, but I think I've watched it once, and I might come back to that this holiday season.
All right, what's your next one?
All right. Santa Claus, the Santa Claus.
The Santa Claus. And who's in
Yeah.
that?
Oh, what's his name? He had the TV show, stand-up comic. Um, First of all, I like the Tim Allen.
Oh yeah.
So and Judge Reinhold. So Tim Allen is in a broken, he's divorced. He's got a young boy. And so the Santa Claus is a clause, a legal clause. That's a part of the Santa suit. And if Santa dies and you put on the suit, you're Santa Claus. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Santa Claus. So I love that one liner, in the title. But again, you're overcoming disbelief. And
Yeah.
and again, kind of like how in Mrs. Doubtfire, where at the very end, Robin Williams is saying to the world, hey, sometimes marriages end, but it's still family. We're still all together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the premise of Santa Claus. Like the mom and dad don't get back together, but there is a oneness and a family that they all appreciate. And what I also love is the ex-wife and her new husband don't believe in Santa Claus because they asked for something as kids and they never got it. And at the end of this movie, those gifts arrive. And part of what's cool is like the look on their face is like an 8-year-old boy just got his, Oscar Mayer Wiener whistle, and you're just like, so yeah, I can watch Santa Claus over and over. The second one was good too. So that was part of what I was wondering, but the third one sucks ass. Don't watch it. But this first one, it's a definite keeper.
Yeah, at one point in the film, there's an exchange between Scott and Laura where Laura hands Scott a piece of paper with one of the other characters' mother's phone number on it. And Scott says, 1-800-SPANK-ME? I know that number.
Yeah. Plus Tim Allen's acerbic wit is kind of throughout, and it's good. Yeah. And his helper up at the North Pole had a really dark sarcasm. So it's got some good
cynicism in it.
Yeah. Plus fucking North Pole was magic. I would move there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. The way North Pole is rendered in that film is really great. That's pretty epic. That's an important part of a good, Christmas movie. If it involves Santa Claus, it's like seeing the coming to life of the different things.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about the Santa Claus that really resonates with you?
That statement, or the movie itself?
The movie itself.
Well, again, it's obvious the transformation of non-believer to believer, and how you said earlier, really the miracles inside. So to the change from non-believer to believer is a miraculous event. And
so that, I think, leads well into my next one, because the one I'm got next is called Fred Claus.
I know this
which
one.
is Vince Vaughn and Paul Giamatti, right?
Vince
and it's
Vaughn
the same
again.
thing. And he is kind of a ne'er-do-well. He's brothers with Nick Claus, but he's been jealous of him since the parents favored him. And then at one point, his younger brother Nick cuts down his favorite tree when they're kids, and that causes a big rift for him. And so Fred just goes through life hating his brother, and he's really avoidant, and his relationship's dysfunctional, and he's broke, and so he ends up in trouble. He goes out and he wants to set up something special and try and do something good for his girlfriend on her birthday, and he screws it up and totally lands in jail, and he can't call her, so he calls his brother Santa. And, Santa says, yeah, I'll give you the 5,000. But meanwhile, his wife's in the bed next to him. Don't give him more money, blah, blah, blah. And Santa's like, well, all right, I'll give it to you. And then Vince says, well, while we're at it, like what but Santa says, why don't you come up and help me and earn some of it by helping me because we're behind schedule, right? And Vince Vaughn says, well, if I'm going to come up there, why don't make it 55,000 because he wants to buy this restaurant, right? So he ends up there at the North Pole, and again, it's this beautiful North Pole, and we see these ways that we've envisioned how the elves make all the toys and stuff. And again, the photography at that point is really tricky because you got Vince Vaughn and you got elves played by real actors. So just like with Elf, there's this whole thing that has to be done with the camera to get the scale right. Anyway, Nick, not Nick, Fred ends up having to take over for Santa because Santa becomes incapacitated from all the stress. And then there's also this subplot where Kevin Spacey plays this, like, he's an auditor, an efficiency expert. And he's like, if you screw this up, it's 3 strikes and we're shutting the whole North Pole down. And that eventually happens, right? And so there's this dark moment where it looks like Christmas can't happen for the first time ever. Kevin Spacey's character is like, shut it down. And there's this moment where Santa and Kevin Spacey meet while Fred Claus is out trying to make the world happen and Christmas happen. And he gives Kevin Spacey this present. He says, I'm really sorry. You know, I missed you that one year. And I know you really wanted a Superman cape. And Kevin Spacey opens up the present and there's the Superman cape. And just like the Grinch, it totally changes his heart. And he opens the North Pole back up, and Fred Claus gets back on track. But there's all these weird things that happen in the middle. Like at one point, Fred Claus is like hating it, and there's an intervention, and they fly his girlfriend up to the North Pole, and she's like, "What? Who knew that you were a Claus?" Like, right? And and I love that Vince Vaughn's writing style, where it's like he's a guy's guy, and it's a lot of the masculinity that we are calling toxic masculine right now, but it's still, he plays it sort of as if it's functional, right? And there's this aspect to it that's really,
I think it is functional.
Well, I
That's
agree.
part of my point.
Yeah.
It's like, let's not toss the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, he gets over his resentment. And then he admits to his brother that he loves him. He admits to his girlfriend that he really deeply cares about her and he was trying to help her. And, it all turns out well in the end. And he moves beyond his fears and gets in the sleigh and, does all these crazy things to make Christmas happen in the end. And it's like, it's not on the level, again, it's not A Wonderful Life, but it's a really fun Christmas romp.
I've never seen it. So
Yeah,
I'll have to, I think I'll be watching it this.
All right, so we have another 10 minutes and we each have 2. You have 2
No,
more.
one. We're on our last one.
All right, go for it.
All right, so last one was Christmas Carol. And what I had, this is my, fucking story is brilliant. Like Dickens wrote, he's a master writer. I love his language. The way he writes is so picturesque and full of great storytelling elements. And A Christmas Carol, I love that he wanted to write a ghost story that was the spirit of Christmas. And when I've just found a podcast on Spotify of a reading of it, that's brilliant. And part of what I was listening to is in the language, like how dark it is. So that's a long-winded way to say there are a lot of, like you brought one up, Scrooged. That was definitely in my consideration. Like, which one do I go with though? And I had to go back to the one that first reeled me in, Mr. Magoo's A Christmas Carol.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It is brilliant. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It is one of the best. And you've got the one with George C. Scott. You've got yours, Scrooged. But this one out of, and those I think are the top 3. Scrooged, the one with George C. Scott, and then Mr. Magoo's A Christmas Carol. And that's the one, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol.
So even though it's animated,
Yeah.
it's voiced by all these classic, you know, old, actors.
Yeah.
It goes dark.
It not as dark, but it does. Like I would say there's a song in there called All Alone in the World. And it's from the Ghost of Christmas Past, where he's alone at the schoolyard. Now, part of like he's left back at school, and part of what I didn't understand until just this recent reading of Christmas Carol is like I always thought Scrooge came from a well-off family and that this boarding house school he was at was for the wealthy. No, it was for the fucking poor. He was there because his father couldn't afford to have him at home. And season after season, he'd be left at school alone while everyone else went home. But this one that the spirit shows, his sister shows up and says, "Hey, dad says he can afford it now. You can come home." And but the song in it, All Alone in the World, is fucking heartbreaking, brings tears to my eyes. And there is darkness, but it's kind of animated Magoo darkness.
Yeah, I got it. I
It's
get it.
cartoonish. It's there. Like when he sees his grave, it's dark.
Yeah.
And in my experience, again, like this was the first rendering of this story that I ever saw as a kid, and I was hooked. And the next day where he wakes up and the miracle took place in one night and he's a new man is exuberant and full of life and wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Classic Christmas movie. All of the characters that have different struggles and different emotional struggles, and then the spiritual struggle where, the one guy who's the geezer who's not, not very generous, becoming generous, and all of the different things, and the eternal optimism of the young orphan, all of that's really important stuff in terms of the human miracle. I totally get it.
Plus, I love the line, you were always a good man of business, and Marley going, mankind was my business.
Yeah.
And that idea of these chains and heavy weights that you're dragging for eternity. And part of the pain is that these ghosts and spirits are seeing these people who need help and they can't help them. And that's part of their pain that they're enduring, Yeah. All right, brother. What's your fifth?
All right. My fifth is a 2020 movie called The Happiest Season.
I don't know this one.
Yeah. And there's no one you've heard of it with the exception of Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis, who are the two principal characters. And basically the film opens and there's these two very different characters, but there's two women and they're clearly in a lesbian relationship. And they're enjoying their community. They go on a walk to see all the lights and stuff like that. And you can really feel their true connection for each other. And it turns out that the one is going to go away to their parents' house for the holidays. And the other one is happy to stay home and it's no big deal. But the one says, "Oh, will you please come? Like, I don't want to be alone at my parents' house because there's all this dysfunction there." And it turns out that her father has always put on his daughters this heavy standard of perfection because he's a politician and he's like constantly putting his family in front of the limelight to create the idea that he's successful, right? And that he's the right guy for the thing. So there's this subtext of his constantly needing to be viewed as perfect in front of the public, and his wife is his social media director, right? And so there's always these things where she's pulling out the phone for the Instagram, right? And like there's this whole undercurrent of what our image is on the top. Well, the two women are driving up to the parents' house, and the one woman whose parents it is has to admit that when she said in July that she'd come out to her parents as gay, she was lying. And so she's in the car and she admits to her lover and lived in lover, that she didn't actually tell her parents. And so they have to pretend when they get there that they're just roommates. And the one woman is, at first, she's a little put off by that, but she's so deeply committed to her partner that she just goes along with every little sort of razor paper cut of denial. And as the film unfolds, her capacity to stay connected in this relationship gets worn thinner and thinner by every little micro betrayal that her lover, because her lover is pretending to be someone else the whole time. And so they come back to the hometown, and there's all these subplots about how she's lived her life, and to the people she knows she's one way, but to her lover she's another, right? And in it, one of the subplots is that this girl that she went to high school with is part of the town, and she keeps running into the would-be lover who's not part of the family, played by Kristen Stewart. And eventually she's getting ignored so much because the one person is seeing her high school friends, and she's just like not being included a lot. And so there she is, her lover's pretending to be someone else. She's spending all this time with these other people. She's not really being real. And that the family itself is really false on all these fronts. Meanwhile, Kristen Stewart is planning to propose to her. And we know this early on in the film because she brings the ring. So there's this thing where her would-be wife is continually showing up as false and not who she says she is, and then betraying her in various different subtle ways. And eventually it gets to be too much. Like there's this one point where turns out that the girl she went to high school with was gay, and they had a gay relationship. And then when some boys saw them kissing, she denied it, and she pulled back, and she said she outed her friend in high school. And so she destroys the relationship of her friendship and her first gay lover, and she pretends she's not gay from that point on in her culture. And then the one who wants to propose, the Kristen Stewart one, she meets this person one of the nights when she's left alone, and they're at a bar that turns out to be a gay bar.
Oh, wait, so Kristen Stewart plays the one who's the jilted lover?
No, Kristen Stewart plays the one who wants to propose.
Okay, so she's by herself
a lot, and then she runs into town. She runs into the other character, and I think that's played by Alison Brie. Yeah. And so there's this moment where she hears the story of how her would-be wife outs the other and denies herself, right?
Oh, wait, so the Kristen Stewart's character's lover meets the high school girl,
right,
and learns how her lover outed this woman in high school
and then denied herself that she was gay, right?
Right. And so she learns like she's a bitch.
Well, and her level of willingness not to own what's true for her, it just goes deeper and deeper, and it's really causing her a lot of grief and fear. And there's this moment where the two of them are reconciling finally back at the house, and one of her other sisters catches them kissing. And so at the Christmas Eve dinner, she reveals to the parents that they're actually lovers. And then she does it again, and she denies it. She says, "No, I'm not gay," right? So that just breaks the heart of the one who wanted to propose to her. And she calls her gay friend, who's a male, back, 3 hours away, and he comes to get her. And there's this big, really big conflict. And then there's a moment where the one girl who's been living a lie realizes that she did it in high school, and now she's doing it again, and it's going to cost her the most important relationship of her life, something she really wants. And so in the middle of all this chaos, in front of her whole family and the potential backers for this guy's campaign, she comes clean. And that's what I love about the film, is that there's this moment where it's absolutely the wrong time. there's a million reasons why to stay hidden, and she just steps forward and she lets all the chips fall where they may. And as a result of being authentic and transparent and vulnerable about her truth, all these things unfold where the father has an epiphany about how he's always held up this perfection standard to his daughters. The mom realizes that she's been performing, perfunctory in order to facilitate the dad, and she has all this life that she'd like to live. And the two women initially start to reconcile, and then
they all break up.
No, then there's this moment where she actually proposes to her and says yes, and the family's all in. And then so it's this thing where what appeals to me about the film is that these hidden parts of ourselves that we don't want to reveal, that make us feel vulnerable and scared about how people are going to perceive us, eventually bring us to these places of chaos and pain where we hurt each other and we betray each other. And then when we finally are willing to own our desires and be transparent about what we really want, it makes it possible for everyone else to do the truth as well. And in the end, the two are united and they get married, and the backers decide that they love how because the father says, I don't care, I want my daughters to be happy, and if that means I can't be mayor of the town, then so be it. And the backer decides, well, I love how honest you are, and so she decides to back him, and he ends up getting elected. And so it's this story of how we harbor all of these hidden aspects of ourselves in order to protect our friends and our family from what we think the damage will be. But in the end, when we reveal our truest nature, it actually makes it possible for everyone else to be honest and forthright too. And that's how the miracle happens.
Right. And it's actually, everyone's blessed. Everyone's better off for it. What I also love is I think there's a scenario in there that I probably have done, and I believe I've experienced, where someone like the Kristen Stewart character with the ring. Like there's this thing where I'm going to propose. I got this ring. That's a really big deal. And in that, she thinks all these other little erosions are okay. Because really, look, I'm going to propose. Like that's I think the inner dialogue that one can tell oneself. I got this really big thing that's going to happen. So this is all okay. But really, those little erosions may make it where by the time this no longer is going to happen because you fucked it up.
Yeah. And we are about to lose everything. And so, and of course the music, and, it's got Dan Levy, who's really funny.
Yeah,
he's really funny. So yeah, those were my top films. And I really went for the quirky things that aren't obvious because I'm a sentimental person. And, I will admit, the big admission I have to our audience is that I get teary in every one of these films, because I really love feeling. And the Christmas time for me is a time to connect with human beings and to really feel our humanity and the miracle of joy and desire that comes through as a result of sharing those intimate moments together in the warmth of the hearth and home. And I wish that for everyone. May you have the deepest feelings of Christmas with your loved ones. And may you, no matter what your economic level, may you see the true gift of life in your relationships. And if you're all alone, your relationship with yourself.
And please stay tuned for the Moped Outlaws' first feature-length production next December, the patriarchal, touchy-feely holiday movie
Of It's Cold Outside.